Hello and welcome to Positive Shelter Photography's 101 photo editing tutorial. My name is Katrina and I'll be your instructor for this video. Today we'll be learning about editing photos in Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom. In this video, we'll be going over the recipe for a great shelter photo, saving time with Photoshop actions, editing animals on a white background in both Photoshop and Lightroom, as well as cool tricks and shortcuts for both PC and Mac users. Alright, so before we get started on the editing portion, I just want to go over a few photography basics of what makes a good shelter photo, specifically within the PSP guidelines. First things first, you have to make sure your camera settings are in check. You really need to become familiar with what ISO is and where it is on your individual camera. White dogs require a lower ISO, and black dogs or any dark dogs will require a higher ISO. And you should always adjust your ISO based on your dog's color. It's important to check this from dog to dog. For sharper photos, we recommend using a flash. You can purchase an off-brand flash on eBay for around $65. This will help you shoot faster, and it's a great way to get a focused shot even with camera models that are below professional level. If you aren't 100% confident about your settings, I would definitely suggest to shoot in RAW for more editing options. RAW images capture all the data recorded by the sensor when you take a photo. With JPEG, the image is compressed and a lot of that information is lost. So if the picture isn't really good as a JPEG, it's hard to manipulate it when it comes to Photoshop. Whereas RAW will keep all that information. The next step you want to take is to analyze your environment. You want to take off the dog's collar if there is one. It does not look good in photos, and it just takes away from the whole picture. It's also really hard to edit it out if you leave it in during the photo shoot, so just take it off and then put it back on when you're done with the dog. The next thing is you want to pay attention to the lighting of the room on that particular day. Once again, just pay attention to the dog's coloring for each photo and change your settings accordingly, like we just talked about. The next step is to remember to get 3 different poses. You want a standing, a sitting, and a headshot, and if you can get different expressions in each one, or at least one of them, that's great. I'm going to show you 3 examples of different poses. Here we have the standing, the sitting, and the headshot. Another example, the standing, the sitting, the headshot. And here we didn't quite get the standing, but we did get a different one that ended up being really cute. And finally the headshot. So as you can see, each one of these brings something different to the table and really shows the dog, its size and its looks and its personality. So you definitely want quality over quantity always. If you have 2 good shots and then you open up the computer and find out your 3rd shot is just awful, don't put it in just because you're supposed to have 3. Aim for 3, but leave it at 2 if you have to. Once again, watch YouTube tutorials on photography. There's so much information out there, and it's super easy to find things specific to your subject or your specific camera settings. Alright, now let's get started with the editing. I'm going to be showing you the process from start to finish. I use a PC and Photoshop, but I will be adding the Mac shortcuts and commands for people using Apple computers. I work primarily in Photoshop, but I'll switch back and forth between Lightroom to show you how to do the same thing in both programs. So let's open up Photoshop and get started. I'm going to begin with the original photo. By the way, all the dog pictures today were taken by Dawn Marie Kalo, so thank you so much for that. So the first thing that I do when I open up a dog photo is I go to Window, Actions, and don't worry about all the other ones, but I made a preset one called Dog Photo Shoot, and before I show you how to make one, let me show you what it does. I press play, and now what it did was it automatically resized it to what I set it for, which was image size, 8 by 10 inches with a 300 resolution, which is perfect for PSP photos. And it also saves the background information, so I can move it around and center it perfectly. It doesn't trim away the sides. And then I can center it, and voila! Perfect to begin with. Another important thing to remember is that the thumbnails on the website are really small, so you want to use the frame as much as you possibly can. I know it's tempting to kind of make it look a little better by sizing it to that size, but really take advantage of all the white space without it looking weird. This is a perfect example of what it should look like and where it should be spaced. Okay, and now I'm going to show you how to make an action. To begin with, we're going to have to exit this again because it's already set. Or actually, we can just start from the beginning. Okay, you have the layer that's locked, which is good because that's how usually all pictures open. And what we're going to do here is we're going to press the new, create new action, and we're going to call this PSP, keep all these the same, and now we're going to hit record. And now, as you can see, this red button lights up and it's recording everything you do. So the first thing that we're going to do is unlock the layer. Now this is really important to do this first because that's going to keep the background information when you trim it down. Now the next thing you're going to do is go to Image, Image Size, and we want it to be 300 resolution, 72 it comes out grainy. And here we're going to put, it has to be 8 by 10, so the height is going to be 8 and the width is going to be 10, but since this automatically resizes, we're just going to keep it 8 by 12. Press OK, and now we're going to go to canvas size and trim down the width to 10. Image size makes the whole image bigger and smaller. Canvas size will make the actual canvas bigger and smaller, so it will actually trim the edges. So it says some clipping will occur, proceed. And there you go. So if you pay attention here, it's actually been recording everything we did with the exact information that we did it at. So set background, it shows you what we did. Image size, it shows you we did 8 inches, 300. So it's recording every single thing. And those 3 simple things are all we need, and we're going to press stop with that action. Now let's see what we did by opening up a completely new photo. Go to example 3. Open with Adobe Photoshop. Alright, and now all we have to do is press PSP, press the play button, and there you go. It did it automatically. So you can see this, if you have a bunch of pictures, how quickly you could just go down the line and press play, play, play. And it saves you a bunch of time, and it's a great tool to use. Even if you use Lightroom to edit, it's awesome to open up and save your files with Photoshop. You can get 40 pictures done in under a few minutes. All right, let's start editing. Let's go back to our main picture. After sizing, the next thing we do is take out the leash. I do this really simply. I just grab the paintbrush, Alt, click the background. Doesn't have to be the exact color, you'll see why. And I just quickly paint out the leash. So again, don't worry about the colors being different. Just as long as you get the blue out. The next part is the kind of tricky part. We want to change the levels of the picture so the white will be as white as possible. But you have to really be careful with this one because we can overdo it and oversaturate or desaturate the picture. So normally with levels, you want to drag it so this side gets right up to the big edge that goes up, and then this side gets right up to the edge that starts going up. If you click off preview, it will show the darkers get dark. Let me show you. This will affect the dark, and this will affect the light. So I know the background's really clean with that, but then you lose all the texture on the dog, and you don't want that to happen. So you very, very minimally want to affect that just to the thing. And don't worry about the background. Pay attention to the dog when you're doing this. The background we're going to make pure white really easily. So just pay attention to make sure the dog is at its best color. Right about there. So before and after. I know it's a slight change, but if you have a good picture to begin with, that's the best thing you can do is just make slight changes. So once we have all the colors updated with the layers, we're going to go ahead and duplicate the layer. You can just drag it and go to new layer and it'll automatically create a duplicate, or you can right click and press duplicate layer. So the reason why we want to duplicate the layer is so we have the original on the bottom with the original shadow. I will show you why in a few minutes why that's going to be very important. Now on to cleaning the background. This used to be the biggest pain in the butt until I figured out this trick thanks to a YouTube tutorial. You can get pure white background in no time. First, we're going to go and click on the lasso. Make sure you're on the top layer of the ones we just duplicated. We're going to put a lasso around the dog really quickly. You don't have to be exact, just get close. And around and around and around. All right, and now that that's selected, we're going to go to, and we're going to invert it, which is Control-Shift-I, or you can go to Select Inverse. I just redid it, so I'm going to do that again. And you're going to go to Edit Fill. We're going to put white. So it's going to fill all that selection around the dog with pure white. And now what we're going to do, this is the best tool you'll ever use on a white background. It's called the Dodge tool, and it's supposed to whiten dirty things like I can show you with the midtones, the exposure at 49. It can very nicely clean the dog up. You don't want to overdo this with a lot of dogs though, because that's not their actual look and people don't want to see something that's not there. But it can help a little. We'll lower that down. Let me show you really quick and we'll lighten that up a little so it looks a little cleaner. But the cool trick is if you go to, instead of midtones, which it's normally set on, you click highlights, put the exposure around 50, 60, doesn't matter. Make sure Protect Tones is unchecked. This is super important or you're going to get a lot of grainy stuff around this. And now, don't worry about that. What this does is it turns everything that it touches white without actually affecting the borders. It keeps all that information so you can get as close to the dog as possible without highlighting the actual dog. So you don't want to put the circle over the dog or else you'll see what happens. It lightens it up like crazy. But you want to get right at the edge, and you can even make this bigger if you're working with smoother ends, much bigger sometimes, especially if it's a dark dog. With white dogs, you have to be a lot more careful and keep it small, but it still works with white dogs, which is the best thing in the entire world for that. So let me show you. I use a pen tablet to do all this, so it does give me a lot more control than a mouse. I'm not sure how much difference it would make, but I know even with a mouse this can work. Alright, and here's the shadow part where it gets tricky. So since I saved the bottom layer and it still has all the shadow, I'm going to erase as much as I can around there. And there's some of the background there, so we want to make sure to get that. Okay. Look how clean that looks. It's spotless. So you have pure white on the outside. You got all the way in there. Missed a spot. And now we're going to erase. We're going to put it on the soft one, put opacity down to about 50, and softly erase. So it's natural shadow looking. And now it doesn't look like it's floating. It looks very much like it's supposed to be there. It's the best thing. So now all we did was erase that layer, and it's showing into the bottom one where it was the original shadow. Now the only thing left to do is touch up any last final touches. Here's where I usually clean up the face and stuff once I have all the information. What I like to do sometimes is sharpen the eyes a bit. Once again, you have to be really careful about this. You don't want to overdo it. So I'll just do strength 26. And I literally just tap one time, tap, barely any difference. Very slight difference. And then for the exposure, I will just tap and tap, make it a little bit brighter. And that doesn't always look good. It just depends on the dog and the thing, but I'll sometimes make the highlights stand out a bit more. And there you go. You have a perfectly edited dog that can now go on any background and it won't show any weird grainy stuff around. So let's check out a quick before and after. This is what we started with. As you can see, much cleaner background. The quality wasn't much different because it was a really great picture to begin with, thanks to Don, not me. But it's as clean and as ready for PSP website as possible. Before I move on to Lightroom and the dreaded white dog on white background, I'm going to show you really quick what that tool can do with a hairy dog. Open one. So we'll go to the dodge tool again. Make it bigger for this because we want to get in on there. And as you can see, you can get really close and basically touch the dog's hair. And all it does is it goes in between without ruining the information. And that's how you can keep all the hair looking the same, not getting too affected by turning the background white. So you want to go quick in, out, in, out. It's a great tool to use for all sorts of things. You can even highlight the entire background with it if you wanted to not do the whole select. That's the way I usually do it now. I don't know if, once again, it would be fast with the mouse as it is with the pen, but you get the idea. Quickly paint that out. That was a kind of quick job, but look how clean that got in that amount of time. Alright, now we're going to switch to Lightroom, but before that, since we're in Photoshop already, let's take the white dog on white background picture. I'm going to use this because it has feathers too, so it's extra difficult. We're going to open it with Photoshop really quick to resize it. So we're going to click PSP, press play, center, expand it to really fill the full picture. Perfect. And now we'll go ahead and save it as Lightroom example. Okay, now let's exit out of here. Alright, exit this, and let's open up Lightroom. Go to, I have a PSP collection. nothing's in it yet. But we're going to drag the Lightroom example picture. Press, let me expand this. Press import. Here's my picture already sized. We're going to click develop. And here we go. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the leash and all the big things in the background that shouldn't be there. We're going to go to spot removal. Alt, click on the background that you want similar to it. Cover it up. Alt click, cover it up with the similar background. Perfect, and Alt click. Alright, and now we're going to fix up the picture to make it look really nice before we edit out the background. Once again, pay attention more so to the dog than the background when doing this. With Lightroom, the advantage is you definitely have a lot more options with making photos look beautiful, especially with RAW, because RAW photos will look really flat because you're supposed to be doing most of the editing for it. This is actually a JPEG right here, so that's a bad example. But we're going to fix the highlights, adjust it until we find the perfect amount. Once again, you never want to overexpose. You just want to make slight realistic adjustments. You don't want it to look like an Instagram photo filter. You want to keep it as realistic as possible. Just kind of go up and down and look at the screen, don't look at the slider, and find it. Sometimes you'll end up going lower than you think you will. Move the vibrance up a tiny bit, make those colors pop out. And here you have the tone curve, which is kind of like levels. You usually want to click on the bottom left and bring that down slightly, and then click on the top and bring that up slightly. It just helps push that contrast out a little bit more and makes the colors pop a tiny bit more with the curve. Other than that, just touch up your pictures. Each picture is individual, each has a different exposure, so mess around with all the good stuff here. I'm not going to spend too much more time editing this. We'll push the whites up to about 21. And now on to the part that you guys really want help with, the background. So with Lightroom, it's a little different than Photoshop. You don't have the dodge tool, you have your usual adjustment tools. So it's going to be click to apply a new mask, you want Mu. Now you want to set the exposure high. You don't want it to be all the way up because you're working with white and feathery stuff, so I guess you don't want it to contrast too much and take all that information. So you bring it up to about 80% there. Make sure auto mask is turned on. Auto mask helps detect the edges, so that way, just like with the dodge tool, we can get close and it won't go over. With white, once again, you do have to be more careful than with dark dogs because they are a lot easier to mix the information with. Let me show you an example. So we're going to go to the back, and just like the dodge tool, you can outline it and it's keeping all the information of the dark. But now watch, when we go, when we go to the white, it can start bleeding in. So this is where you have to be careful. It's still possible, that's the good thing. You just have to get closer. Alright, so we're just going to follow the edge. And get a little closer. And with Lightroom, you get two circles. The inner circle basically tells you what not to go over. So I can get over the first circle, but once I get over the second, it's going to start taking away the part that you're going over. So we're going to do the same exact thing as in Photoshop. Just trace the edge. Don't worry too much about feathers. Feathers are feathery, so you can go a little bigger if you can't really see the information. Just get the general gist of those. You'll see why when we back up it won't really matter. And here's white on white, which normally it's a pain, and here you can see how easy it is to just kind of separate the bright white from the regular white. Make it really small, get up all the way in there. All right, continue down here. Let's back it up a little bit. Just kind of weave in and out. Once again, don't worry too much about losing some of those feathers. And now we're gonna go to the whole thing and just fill in all that background with pure white. Make sure you lift up your pen every once in a while, or your mouse. So if you do accidentally make a mistake, you can just undo really quickly. And you don't lose everything. Like that. Speaking of. Alright, and we are done outlining. So now you can see it's nicely do the in and out thing. Too much. Okay, perfect. So now we have taken all that out, and we're going to press erase to get the shadow back in. Now this is where it gets a little tricky with Lightroom, because we can't just softly erase the duplicated layer back. So the flow is at around 58. We can probably bring that up. So we're just going to kind of outline from the bottom of the dog's back foot to the front, just in general where a shadow would be above. Kind of follow the dog's feet from foot to foot. Alright, I'm going to bring down a little bit of the bottom, straighten that out. And because the shadow still looks sort of bulky and not realistic, we're going to take on the adjustment brush and put new, and create a new brush, quickly go over it, over the shadow. By the way, anytime you want to see what you are working with and all you can see is white, you can just go selected mask overlay and it'll show you everything that you just selected, and you can also fill in the parts that you missed that way. Alright, so we're going to turn the exposure down on that, turn the whites down, shadows can go up, highlights can go up, and there, that gives it a nice, soft, realistic look. Now next we're going to press New again. Turn the exposure down, the whites down but not all the way, and put the flow a little down. And we're going to go over the dog's white really quickly, just softly. You don't want to overexpose. Again, lose any of the fur. Still looks like too much, so bring it to about 10. Just clean up the fur a bit. Okay, and now we are almost done. We're just going to zoom in on the eyes. New. We're going to turn the exposure up. I'm just going to click anywhere on the white. And quickly, softly, we're going to add some highlight in the eye. And then we're also going to adjust the sharpness ever so slightly. And there you go. Move the shadows up, make it really sparkle. And that is our dog on a white background, white dog with feathers. You can see the before and after really quick. Before and after. A lot of difference. Alright, now the last thing I want to show you before we end this tutorial is really quickly how to clean up, say, the eyes, the eye crusts on that dog. Open it with Photoshop. And for the sake of time, I will upload a YouTube video on how to do it in Lightroom. But really quickly, I'm going to duplicate this layer just to see the before and after. I use a clone stamp tool right here, right below the brush. And I just press Alt and take something that looks similar to what we're going to cover. So usually I put it on the soft circle, put opacity to about 80%, makes it look more realistic. And then I continuously click Alt and just paint over it with. So Alt, paint, and I just get all the information around it. And you don't want to do this to the degree where you can't, if a dog has like mange or something serious, you want to keep it there so people know. But it does help with the little stuff like this, just cosmetic things. Back that up, so before and after. So that concludes our tutorial for today. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. We'll be adding more videos to respond to those questions and go into further detail. Also, I will be adding links to very helpful YouTube tutorials in the description of this video. Thank you guys again, and I hope you have a wonderful day.